Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Freshagenda, and Steve, we're back with another exciting episode. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's occupying our minds this week as we prepare to release another quarterly in the next week or so.
Yep.
And then, of course, a wrap-up of GDT and Chart of the Week.
So let's crack into this. A bit busy, this slide. I'm sorry about that.
It is.
I know how you like things a lot clearer and simpler in these sessions. Look, just to call out a few things, demand and supply side, what's bearish, what's bullish, heavily weighted to the top of that table there. But I guess we've talked a bit about the China thing in the last time, and we did a lot of that in the fundamentals video that came out. Look, the US is probably the most dynamic space, and a couple of things here. Just what's the impact of rising prices on demand, and in particular on cheese demand, obviously the most important category, and that affects milk use and the competitiveness of cheese in export markets, which is that's a topical issue right now. Just the retail sales, splitting out grocery and food service here, but if you strip out inflation,
it's actually going backwards.
It's actually going backwards in food service. A little better than grocery there, the bars on the left-hand side there. Grocery, though, in fairly steep decline, for grocery. It's falling nearly 3% year on year. The other thing in the US is the impact of, we've got declining forward values for cheese, impacting the class 3 futures, and, corn price still going up with some recent data.
So that's likely to put a bit of pressure on margins.
Yeah. And that's a daily margin read we have based on futures and prices for both feed and milk. So that's showing it's dipping.
A bit of a downward trend, yeah. So one to watch.
Yeah.
There's a bit more on what that's doing to production or not.
At the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, the other thing I think one of the most difficult things right now, as everyone would probably recognise, is what's happening with energy supplies and costs in Europe, and whether or not that's going to affect drying, skim milk powder drying. And there's a lot of speculation and rumour, conjecture, whatever, that this is or isn't a problem, that there seems to be building reserves, but whether or not that is a major shortfall. There's a shortfall in winter when it really matters. So there are some views from Europe that skim milk powder will not be affected from here. That it'll in fact be better than last year's output, which was down anyway.
Yep.
But lots of different views. The other issue, of course, is milk supply, which there's also a bit of a ticking time bomb there with the quality of feed.
Yes, as the cows go indoors, that's going to become an issue.
Yeah. So anyway, this week's GDT.
Bit of a mixed bag, wasn't it?
Yeah, it didn't tell us a lot. We saw there skim milk powder, the most disappointing part of this. Whole milk moved up again in line with recent GDT pulse results, but also the futures were strong, and in the last couple of weeks didn't quite get that far.
Yep.
But again, the rebalancing of fat and AMF coming back. You can see on the right-hand side, recent trends in other region prices. I think, we've seen a strong surge in US cheese, still seeing prices creep up in Europe in the main. So it's pretty interesting space. What happened on demand, though, at this event, we had good whole milk powder demand. Some of that came from China.
A lot more from Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Like
right.
in terms of buying, though. So interesting.
Yeah, that's correct. And then AMF also, the bargain is still there. So those prices have continued to come back. Just showing you where in terms of the starting demand, both powders close to like average.
Yep.
In terms of that, the way we plot that. And some of the buying trends, yes, GDT buying by China was up a little. These are tonnes, up a little on the previous event, still well below, way below where they've been. Skim milk powder was also better, best in a couple of years.
Yeah,
we think.
Yep.
Since April, 2 years actually to this event.
Yep.
Where that blue line is pretty tricky to read that, but skim milk powder for Southeast Asia was down a little bit. as was whole milk. A little bit of a worry on some of those volumes because they're starting to back off a bit.
They are, aren't they?
Particularly the skim milk powder that's dipping away. So just how that goes going forward is an important thing to watch here in these events. A couple of other interesting charts out of buying. The Middle East seems like the rush to get whole milk powder as a bargain is starting to wane, backed off. And China bought 60% of the butter sold on this event, best for a while as well. And that bodes well for the uptake there. That's a bit of a signal that there's a bit of confidence.
Yes, so it's a second positive result we've had in GDT. It's not bad, but is it convincing?
No. No. Some other relativities. The AMF discount closed a bit.
Yes.
Down to $400, where it hasn't been for some time. There was an interesting flip in the differential between New Zealand and European skim milk powder for medium heat product. It flipped to a discount for New Zealand product, so stronger bidding on European, going into the European region. And then the synthetic value differential stays fairly wide.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Didn't really close up much at all. Joe, chart of the week.
Yeah, well, we're back in the States. Just looking at what's happened with US milk production, it did increase for the latest month of data. All about the yield, though. Cow numbers didn't really have an impact
year on year,
although they were up on the previous month. But just looking at some of these regional trends is interesting, Steve. Just where the growth is happening, and perhaps where it's not.
Yeah, and when we look at the regions, and the reason we break these out, I mean, it's how the US reports, but the central region is where most of the cheese happens.
Yep.
Most of the powder in the west. So quite a stark difference. So they're showing latest, then 3 month, then 6 month in the lighter bars. California was interesting in its resilience, I guess you'd say, when there's lots of stories about exits.
Loads of horror stories about what the lack of water is doing to dairy, but holding on. But
it's still punched out 2% growth. But that absolute chart on the right-hand side, the one on the left is just percentages, but the absolute, contributors to growth, just showing how strong the central region is. That growing at better than 2%, that's a warning sign of demand is weaker going forward. So
all that new cheese capacity being filled.
Well, that's an interesting wrap. That's all from us. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks after we go to the US.